ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning into our New Year podcast here with Donald and I. Coming up with the new year here, there's a lot of things that you can be excited if you were a beginner last year and us. What is your third year or second year, Donald, in the business?
Second year. Yep.
Second year. Yeah, second year in the business. Same with me here in terms of like a full year cycle. Is like, you learn a lot of things going through it, right? And every time the Q4 ends, you got a new year coming up. So, we can just do some catching up today, I guess. Like, what are some of your initial goals coming into 2024 that you had learned from 2023? And I know both of us started a great day today, running over 10 miles. So I think that's a pretty good start for the year. And yeah, I guess in terms of your Amazon FBA business, what are some things or ideas you have for this year coming up?
Yeah, so really, I'm just gonna continue working on what's already been working. This is actually my third year going into it. I started thinking about it. I was like, that doesn't seem right.
It goes
So it's
by
actually
fast.
my third year. It
Yeah.
really does. But so first year was a lot of figuring out what worked, and then this last year was really just honing in on what I was comfortable with in my niches.
Yeah.
And this third year is going to be just continuing that, just getting the processes in place to efficiently scale, and not have holes in the business or anything. Obviously, there will always be a little bit, but really trying to diminish that as much as possible.
Yeah, you brought up a good point where each year is kind of like a different thing from the past. Like, for example, the first year keyword you mentioned is about like figuring it out, experimenting regarding your Amazon FBA business. The second year could have been focused maybe on scaling a little bit, learning more. And the third, you can have those 2 years experience under your belt. Now it's building, efficiency, how you can work smarter than, not necessarily harder. And because you've learned those 2 years, what not to do and stuff like that.
Yeah, and we both started pretty similar, right? Like just flipping like used books or just
Yeah.
just kind of random shit.
Yeah, that was the first year and trying literally different categories and stuff like that. Yeah, started with books. I don't know, got some toys, some baby
Yeah,
products.
I did a lot of Lego the first year.
And you were into retail arbitrage, I remember when you first started, just because naturally from the books itself, you were already going in store, right?
Retail arbitrage was really interesting because I happened to start selling on Amazon right as Walmart was doing their annual Lego clearance sale. There you go. That's how you get ungated right there. Lego.com, man.
Yeah, buy
Um,
10 units or more, the cheapest thing you can find.
That's what's funny too when you're first starting. I thought it was like just getting a Lego ungate was like the hardest thing ever. And I just messaged somebody and he was like, just go to lego.com and
Why do you
order
think
10
that is?
units.
Why do you think that is? Like, for me, I think like as a new person, especially into a business, I think we just take everything so literal and serious. I'm not saying it's
Hmm.
not okay. That's coming off like the wrong way, but like when you're like into it, like a little bit more experience, you kind of learn how to, I would say move forward without having that much like
Yeah, no, I
you.
get exactly what you're saying. Because
Yeah,
when you're first starting, the simplest roadblocks, what feels so difficult is really just a simple task. Like
yeah,
just figuring out the most simple things. How do I get all my software connected to Amazon? It might seem like a big ordeal at first, but you just continually chip away at these things, and what seems so difficult eventually through all of your research, or if you just even have one friend that you can talk with and you guys can figure it out together. I mean, two brains is better than one in that situation.
no, I mean that goes with everything, right? Like, even if you have a small little group with Amazon thing, like one person's issue could be a learning thing for you and others as well, because you might not be going through the same thing, but maybe down in the future, like, oh, I remember X, Y, and Z went through like an IP complaint or whatever. Let me ask him how we
Hmm.
figure it out, right?
Hmm. Or even just when I was first starting and I was consuming as much content as humanly possible, just whether it be a podcast format of Amazon or live streams through people that they were hosting, people would ask questions that I would also have that question. And you just don't realize, like, a lot of people are probably going through similar things, especially when you're a beginner, your first 1, 2 years in, just trying to figure some of these things out. I mean, we're all in the same boat here.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the goal, regarding this podcast is to bring, value to the viewers over here because we've gone through the same thing. And it could be just like simple conversations like this that someone could be watching, whether they're prepping or just doing something and they're playing this video in the background, that you can get something out of it. So, that's the goal of this podcast recording here, is to bring some value to, new sellers, especially.
Yeah. So, how important do you feel like niching down was for you in your Amazon business? Like really honing in on whatever you felt most comfortable with or saw the most success with?
Yeah, no, it was super useful, and it kind of brought me some confidence in terms of my sourcing, because when I found started to find like a niche for me, it was like beauty and grocery products. That was like the
Hmm.
turning point of the business, because it gave me like reassurance that I can certainly do this, because I kind of knew like maybe the tricks or the websites or the sales going on at the time, and I just kept going at it because had found success. And the thing also helped me as well. It's like once I started finding success there, it's, you double down, right? Because, why not? Like, you're
Exactly.
winning. But also, I didn't stop looking at different categories out there as well, or even brands in general in that same niche.
Hmm.
Yeah, how about for you? Did you had that same experience, or you were just,
No, 100%. With the first year starting, it really, I knew I wasn't going to make a lot of money selling used books at the scale I was trying to do it at. Not saying you can't make money with used books. We both know people who actually
yeah,
are very successful just selling books, but
it just takes
using
long.
those was more of the learning opportunity to learn all the software and really start diving into like Keepa charts and stuff. But then after I naturally gravitated towards shoes again. I sold shoes before Amazon, and then I started seeing the most success with shoes again after about 4 or 5 months of just really trying to figure everything out, trying out the different categories. So I just naturally ended right back up in shoes, and it was huge. That was where I started seeing my success for sure.
And
It's
you
just
can
what
say
I
this.
enjoy.
And you can say the same thing with your business in general, because there's other businesses out there in Amazon. If you guys didn't know, there's wholesale, there's private label, there's the arbitrage, which is broken down to online and retail. And for you, you found your strong point in terms of the retail arbitrage, and I had kind of leaned towards the online arbitrage as well. You want to just talk a little bit
Hmm.
about that, like in terms of your relationship with the shoes, and maybe your your background, that kind of help you
Yeah.
gravitate towards that.
So actually, before I started selling on Amazon, I was just in college, like most other people. I was actually studying to be a aviation mechanic. And I met a kid first day in class, and we started talking about shoes and stuff. He was on the Nike website just looking for deals to try and find profitable inventory to flip, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And we started talking about, like some new shoe drops that were coming up, new Jordans and whatnot. Neither
Yeah.
of us really knew how to do any of that at scale, or even how to go about getting some of these hard shoes. We were just kind of bouncing ideas off each other. And this guy next to us, actually, I'm pretty sure he overheard us, because the next day, he didn't say anything that day, but he came in the next day in a pair of shattered backboard Jordan ones, which, if any of you guys know, it's a classic. And at the time, those were selling for about $700-800. So I was like,
No
all right,
kidding.
I got to start talking to this guy.
Okay.
And he basically just showed me the ropes, just the simplicities, like the sneakers app, which, as simple as that seems now, I had no idea about the sneakers app. And yep,
This is
there
it
you
right
go.
here. This is it right here. Shattered backboard Jordan
Let me
1.
see.
Dude, they're going for 2,500 in StockX Retro 1 right
Yep.
here.
Yep.
That is nutty.
But yep,
Wow.
so that's them. And he just showed me like Sneakers app, which was really simple, but at the time I had no idea about it. And we actually had a pretty good mall in our city, and he kind of told me about like, hey, you can go in, you can start putting in raffles for these shoes, and that's really where I started. And just throughout COVID, continually did that. And then coming into 2021, I'd seen a decent amount of success with the hype shoes, and I was like, all right, let's go ahead and start moving into Amazon because I'd just been following a couple people who were seeing success in the space, and I was like, if they're doing it, I can too, man.
Yeah,
So
no, that mentality of like positivity, and you can as well as other people can do it. That's important,
no, if you and me can do it,
can
then
do it. Yeah.
whoever is watching as well, like you truly
No,
can.
yeah.
It's and what when I was struggling in the beginning of the business, I kept reminding myself, look at all the other people who have seen success. It isn't, it's not rocket science. Like you just continually work at it and you will see success. Even it might seem really hard at first, but if all these other people can do it, you sure as hell can too.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I want to add into it because coming into this Amazon business, like if you're a beginner and you see these other sellers, oh, like they're selling, 100,000, a million, so on and so forth. It can be like a big number. Like honestly, it might be overwhelming to like think about it. It's like, oh, how can I get there if I'm don't know anything? But Dahl and I, we were there. Like we didn't know anything about Amazon. Like, did you know anything about
Hmm.
shoes at all? Like before doing the flipping thing?
No,
Yeah,
no,
and
not at
you
all.
right. I didn't know anything about shoes either, but like throughout your sourcing time and all that stuff, you just naturally pick up all these things and want to relate something. Like I used to sell, Range Rover and stuff. Like I didn't know anything about the different models out there, all the options, but being around them and seeing them all the time, and yeah, you take time out of your day to kind of learn some of these products, but it will all come naturally to you. It's not going to come at once. So this, a really important mindset that if you're new, like, take it one step at a time. So regarding this, the new year coming up, where are we at in terms of, do you have like a set revenue goal that you want to accomplish? Or I know you mentioned more efficiency regarding your business. Talk about a little bit because I know you were thinking about hiring some VAs as well.
Yeah, so I had set a revenue goal this year to hit $1 million. Last year we had hit about 450,000. So that was really big at the time. I thought I was shooting for the stars by aiming
Yeah,
for that million.
let's
But
go.
little be known, in just a short amount of time, going off of backtracking what I knew and then really honing into my skills, I was able to actually crush the goal that we set. So, really, for this year, I'm not as big on setting a revenue goal. I know in my head we all have something we're aiming
Yeah,
towards,
yeah,
but really this year I'm getting as focused on the processes as I possibly can. And what I mean by that is all the back end work by making sure that all my orders in every unit is essentially tracked from purchase to prep center to sale. And then, as most people know, and it keeps some people away, being in the shoe category, it is a higher return rate. So there's an extra step in there. After the sale, I need to be tracking all my returns because that can be a massive part. That could be a massive hit in the business if you're not keeping track of all those things. So that's really what I'm focused on this year, just making sure everything's tight. Going to continue to scale, of course, but really dialing in on those things as well is I'm putting a lot more mindset into that this year. And that's also where VAs are going to come into play because they can help me with a lot of that back end work that really just doing so much RA, it's like I sometimes have a hard time just getting to the computer for the day. Like you're just out on the road all day or dropping off shipments to a prep center or prepping your own orders. Sometimes it might be 9 p.m. by the time you get home. So really trying to manage my time more properly as well is something big that I'm gonna take into account this year. But what about you?
Yeah, no, same thing for me. Of course, growing the business in terms of revenue is on top of mind. But the same thing, we're here going into our third year in terms of Amazon is it's going to be like a lot of efficiencies, just trying to run a better machine. The thing I really want to focus in terms of this year is do a little bit more retail arbitrage, right? Get some more capital in terms of that. I may hire another VA to kind of help with other things on the back end. Again, the reason I say that because in terms of where we're at now, we traveled for a month last year, and that was
Yep.
amazing, right? So I don't know, kind of just want to do some more of that things that really, made me happy in terms of like just life in general. So want to definitely do more of that, and in order to do it consistently, kind of have some important systems and structures going on because that was really the first time how come we did it was a 2 week thing for it's supposed to be. I
Yep.
extended my trip, but I mean it kind of happened last minute, but it is what it is. So that's kind of like what I wanted to accomplish this year in terms of that. Then of course in terms of the other thing like YouTube, social media, that's still like step by step
Hmm.
process, slowly growing that as
hmm
well.
So what do you have your VAs for? How many VAs do you have right now?
I had two. One had resigned due to health issues and stuff like that. So I currently have one full time. She's doing some sourcing for me, doing some
Hmm.
syncing items to the prep center, a little bit of repricing, and yeah, those are her pretty much main tasks.
How big do you think that help is in the business? Just having an extra set of eyes on everything and helping you with the sourcing and whatnot.
It's definitely a great help once you start scaling the business. If you were still a beginner doing your thing, do everything yourself because that's how be hands on. That's how you're gonna learn a lot. But for me, last year was really great help because in order for me to scale, I had the capital for the business to buy inventory. Now my
Hmm.
issue then was finding leads, and
hmm
it came to a point where I need to spend X amount of dollars each month in order to be where I need to hit my goals in terms of revenue. But in order to do that, I got to backtrack where I need to be spending each month in order to hit that. So I need more leads, and stuff like that. So those two VAs help me kind of go to that track.
I feel like you brought up an interesting point there, though, right? When you first started, you didn't immediately just go in and start hiring a VA, right?
No, you
You
can't
said
because you don't know what you're gonna be doing
you
then.
do stuff yourself, but a lot of people get this idea that they just think they're going to hire a VA and this person is just going to be a robot who can turn out leads nonstop. But you understood sourcing yourself quite well before you had a VA, right?
Yeah, and it's not even that I understood that thing too, but also I was also learning at the same time because you can't have the mindset that you know everything already. Yes, you might know some things, but
Hmm.
there's always changes going on, not just for Amazon in general, but like there's keep updates, right? There's different
Yeah.
things. So I think it's also important as a beginner to always have that like learning mentality, and that's how you keep on growing and stuff like that. Like, because
hmm
once you think you're an expert in terms of this, then you try to teach it to someone, you're gonna have a closed mindset. Like when I was teaching my VAs what I knew about sourcing, they were teaching me on the other hand. When I look at the leads, some days I'm surprised of like, wow, like I wouldn't thought this would be a buy, but like they had found
Yeah.
different ways to kind of source these items,
Yeah.
which is cool.
For sure. I guess I was just getting at you didn't immediately start Amazon and you're like, I'm gonna get the VA, they're just gonna start finding stuff nonstop. Like you gotta teach them a little bit, and make sure that they at least understand the basic premises and kind of give them somewhere to start, like a leading foot.
Yeah, no, that's a good point that you have. You want to have at least some sense of direction because it depends on the VA you're hiring. I hired my VAs. They didn't have much experience. I mean, they knew some Amazon basics and stuff, so
Hmm.
I kind of like narrowed down my focus, whether that's a specific website or a specific category, to just focus on that rather than just like giving them a wide open field and they don't have a starting point, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Kind of niche down.
Yeah, exactly. I know you had mentioned earlier in terms of where you're trying to be at this year in terms of the business and stuff. Is that what you would recommend to someone like as a beginner? Or I would say, what would you recommend to a beginner starting Amazon FBA when they first start? I know you mentioned about tracking and stuff like that. How would you set up your business if you were to start over knowing what you know now?
Definitely tracking absolutely everything. I know a lot of people say when you're just a beginner, just kind of ride it out, use Inventory Lab, let it do its thing. But I
Hmm.
feel like when you're a beginner, it's the most important to start developing these healthy habits, such as just simple things. Create a buy sheet. Make sure that your orders are tracked, your unit total is tracked. Something that a lot of people miss over, even in lower return rate categories, is not looking at their returns. And when people are smaller, they're like, well, I'm not too worried about it right now. I'm just focused on scaling up more. Which, don't get me wrong, I do recommend. Obviously, trying to look for $100 in lost refunds, you're your time is much more valuable spent sourcing, but you need to it's simple once you understand it and once you know what to look for. Developing these healthy habits to track everything, such as returns, your units from purchase to prep center if you're using one, to Amazon to sale. Just getting into those habits, and it's much easier to track when you're small. So
Yes.
as you get these processes in place, you can continue to scale up and it gets much easier to be like, hey, everything is tracked. We already know what's going on. And that's something that I kind of ran into this year was I changed up the way I was doing things by having a local prep center. And something we were both figuring it out as we went between me and the prep center, being as I do a lot of retail arbitrage. But as it went, what ended up happening is I didn't have some of my processes properly in place, which resulted in some possible lost inventory. And when you're just getting, that's why I also mentioned I'm not trying to triple my sales numbers this year. Now, like that would be great, but I'm more focused on having the processes in place to make sure everything is tight knit before I get to these 3, 4, 5, $6 million revenue years. So the inventory is, you actually know what's going on within your business. There's not a lot of leaks, and that could result in tens of thousands of dollars of lost inventory.
No, yes. It's one of those things where you take a step back to move maybe, 5 steps forward and stuff like that. It's really important
100%.
to make sure you have your, what do you call that? Ducks in a row. Is that the the saying? you
Sure,
know,
you can say
or
that.
ducks ducks lined up. Anyway, how would how would someone go about doing these tracking and stuff like that if they don't know anything about Amazon FBA or anything at all? How would you do this if you want to walk them through the process?
So there's a couple different ways you can go about it. One would be finding people in the community who actually create some of these Excel sheets. They'll create different types of spreadsheets, like buy sheets, just different ways you can track your inventory. The way I learned pretty much everything is through just talking with friends like you, Joe, just like our Amazon group, and then just kind of figuring out how to make it work for me. So I would see what my friends are doing, how they're tracking things, and I would either use theirs or I would kind of I'd kind of use that as a reference point to create my own spreadsheets to be tracking everything. Like a big one was the refunds. So I ended up just asking, I just started thinking like who would I know that tracks refunds properly, or who that would you follow, or just who do you think would track their refunds good? A bigger Amazon seller possibly. And that was where I went, and I just simply asked him like, "Hey, how do you do this?" And he ended up linking me with a prep center to take care of my refunds. And then through the prep center, he gave me his spreadsheet that we share, and he kind of gave me his process on how he wants it done. So I essentially had an Excel sheet where I started inputting that data. Um,
Yeah,
my
that's why you
buy
get your
sheet,
template from.
yeah, exactly. My buy sheet, you helped me with that. Um, so really just talking with other people was the way I did it. But like I said, you could also find people in the community who sell these spreadsheets. I don't know if it's worth it though. Some of them seem really expensive, and for what they are, it really depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you just need some basic tracking, that what do you call it? That you can just keep an eye, whether that's a order number, you can copy that order number from your Excel sheet, then, you know, paste it maybe in your email if you need to find something quickly instead of like going through it one by one. And
Hmm.
that's the little thing that helped. I mean, get like worst case scenario, if you guys need a template, you can message me. I'm more than happy to share one of my basic templates here. Actually, let me share like a basic one. That way,
Yeah, that
if you're
would be
watching,
good.
yeah, if someone's watching this, you can actually have an idea. So as you can see my screen here, this is a lead tracker. So literally simple Google Sheets. It's free. Order number, quantity, how many you ordered, the product title, you can copy that on Amazon, date purchase, the ASIN, date refunded. I mean, you can add more things here, whatever, like the credit card you used, right?
Hmm.
What else? Like notes,
Add a
anything here.
note file. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can just continue adding this, highlight it, whatever you want, make it look pretty. But the idea and the concept here is to just track everything. Sorry, one thing just popped up I didn't add here is you can do like a buy cost here or whatever, or like, um, you know,
Tracking
or
numbers.
yeah, and all that stuff. Again, even my sheet that I'm showing here in the example doesn't have everything, but hopefully you guys can see the point that
It's a good
you can,
good reference point.
yeah,
You
you
don't
can
need
add
to
something into it.
overcomplicate it.
No, that's it. Keep it simple in the beginning. Then once you get more experience, you can always customize your sheet there and stuff. So yeah, it's a really good tool and tip if you're a beginner, like starting, is track everything. Yeah, so we're coming up here to the 30th minute. Anything else you want to add in terms of, New Year's, anything you want to talk about?
Just keep grinding on the business. Always learn. Always keep an open mind. You definitely want to keep an open mind if you're going to be an Amazon seller.
Yeah, always continue adapting. Learn how to adapt. And you guys, we're gonna do this every week. Do we have your commitment to do this every week, Donald?
Yeah, we're going to do it
Cool.
every week.
Yes, and if you guys have questions, let us know. We can use some of those questions as, uh, format or subject topics that we can talk about in the video, and other things that we have some ideas that we're going to do the format, which is really cool as well. We actually thought about it just before recording. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.
Nice.